Are we rolling? We rolling? Alright. No? Yeah? No. Okay. Hey, you know, I still haven't got my check. You know, I try not to bring it up, but, you know, I'm kind of like needing that check. So, if anybody talks to the big boss or Bob in accounting, can you see about getting me my check? Thanks. Alright. Today we got Carter Page. A little bedtime story for you. We rolling? Okay. Yeah. Okay, here we go. Carter Page. Carter Page worked for the Trump campaign from January 2016 to September 2016. He was formally and publicly announced as a foreign policy advisor by the candidate in March 2016. Page had lived and worked in Russia, and he'd been approached by Russian intelligence officers several years before he volunteered for the Trump campaign. During his time with the campaign, Page advocated pro-Russia foreign policy positions and traveled to Moscow in his personal capacity. Russian intelligence officials had formed relationships with Page in 2008 and 2013, and Russian officials may have focused on Page in 2016 because of his affiliation with the campaign. However, the investigation did not establish that Page coordinated with the Russian government in its efforts to interfere with the 2016 presidential election. And then we got some footnotes. But you know, we don't do footnotes, especially when I haven't got my check. Let's see what we got down here. A. Background. Before he began working for the campaign in January 2016, Page had substantial prior experience studying Russian policy issues and living and working in Moscow. From 2004 to 2007, Page was the deputy branch manager of Merrill Lynch's Moscow office. There, he worked on transactions involving the Russian energy company Gazprom and came to know Gazprom's deputy chief financial officer, Sergei Yatsenko. In 2008, Page founded Global Energy Capital LLC, GEC, an investment management and advisory firm focused on the energy sector and emerging markets. The company otherwise had no sources of income, and Page, grand jury. The company otherwise had no sources of income, and Page was forced to draw on his own life savings to support himself and pursue his business venture. Page asked Yatsenko to work with him on GFC as senior advisor on a contingency basis. Oh, and grand jury. In 2008, Page met with Alexander Bulatov, a Russian government official who worked at Russian consulate in New York. Page later learned that Bulatov was a Russian intelligence officer. More grand jury. In 2013, Viktor Podobnia, two Y's, another Russian intelligence officer working covertly in the United States under diplomatic cover, formed a relationship with Page. Podobnia met Page at an energy symposium in New York City and began exchanging emails with him. Podobnia and Page also met in person on multiple occasions, during which Page offered his outlook on the future of the energy industry and provided documents to Podobnia about the energy business. In a recorded conversation on April 8, 2013, Podobnia told another intelligence officer that Page was interested in business opportunities in Russia. In Podobnia's words, Page got hooked on. What's he hooked on? Something Russian. Vodka, maybe? No. Let's see. Gazprom, thinking that they had a project he could rise up. Maybe he can. It's obvious that he wants to earn lots of money. Podobnia said that he had led Page by feeding him on empty promises that Podobnia would use his Russian business connections to help Page. Podobnia told other intelligence officers that his method of recruiting foreign sources was to promise them favors and then discard them once he'd obtained relevant information from them. Clever. In 2015, Podobnia and two other Russian intelligence officers were charged with conspiracy to act as unregistered agent of a foreign government. The criminal complaint detailed Podobnia's interactions with and conversations about Page, who was identified only as Male 1. Based on criminal complaints description of the interactions, Page was aware that he was the individual described as male 1. Page later spoke with a Russian government official at the United States. Page later spoke with the Russian government official at the United Nations General Assembly and identified himself so that the official would understand that he was male 1 from the Pod Obninian complaint. Page told the official that he didn't do anything. Tell that to the grand jury. In interviews with the FBI before the office's opening, Page acknowledged that he understood that the individuals he had associated with were members of the Russian intelligence services, but he stated that he had only provided immaterial, non-public information to them and that he did not view this relationship as back channel. Page told investigating agents that the more immaterial, non-public information I give them, the better for this country. Origins of and early campaign work of Carter Page. In January 2016, Page began volunteering on an informal, unpaid basis for the Trump campaign after Ed Cox, a state Republican Party official, introduced Page to Trump campaign officials. Page told the office that his goal in working with the campaign was to help candidate Trump improve relations with Russia. To that end, Page emailed campaign officials offering his thoughts on U.S.-Russia relations, prepared talking points and briefing memos on Russia, and proposed that candidate Trump meet with President Vladimir Putin in Moscow. In communications with campaign officials, Page also touted his high-level contacts in Russia and his ability to forge connections between candidate Trump and senior Russian government officials. For example, on January 30th, 2016, Page sent an email to senior campaign officials stating that he had spent the past week in Europe and had been in discussions with some individuals with close ties to the Kremlin, who recognized that Trump could have a game-changing effect in bringing the end of the new Cold War. The email stated that through this discussions with these high-level contacts, Page believed that a direct meeting in Moscow between Mr. Trump and Putin could be arranged. Page closed the email by criticizing U.S. sanctions on Russia. And more grand jury stuff. On March 21st, 2016, candidate Trump formally and publicly identified Page as a member of his foreign policy team to advise on Russia and in the energy sector. Over the next several months, Page continued providing policy-related work product to campaign officials. For example, in April 2016, Page provided feedback on an outline for a foreign policy speech that the candidate gave at the Mayflower Hotel. See Volume 1, Section 4, A4 Intro. In May 2016, Page prepared an outline of an energy policy speech for the campaign and then traveled to Bismarck, North Dakota to watch the candidate deliver the speech. Chief Policy Advisor Sam Clovis expressed appreciation for Page's work and praised his work to other campaign officials. C. Carter Page's July 2016 trip to Moscow. Page's affiliation with the Trump campaign took on a higher profile and drew the attention of Russian officials after the candidate named him a foreign policy advisor. As a result, in late April 2016, Page was invited to give a speech at the July 2016 commencement ceremony at the... more footnotes, but we'll get past them. More grand jury. This guy... It's not over for Carter Page. Thank you. I'd like to thank my agent getting me into this mess. New economic school in Moscow. The NES commencement ceremony generally featured high-profile speakers. For example, President Barack Obama delivered a commencement address at the school in 2009. NES officials told the office that the interest in inviting Page to speak at NES was based entirely on his status as a Trump campaign advisor who served as the candidate's Russia expert. Andrei Kirikovic, an associate of Page's and an assistant professor at the Higher School of Economics in Russia, recommended that NES rector Shlomo Weber invite Page to give the commencement address based on his connection to the Trump campaign. Denis Klementov, an employee of NES, said that when Russians learned of Page's involvement in the Trump campaign in March 2016, the excitement was palpable. Weber recalled that in summer 2016 there was substantial interest in the Trump campaign in Moscow, and he felt that bringing a member of the Trump of the campaign to the school would be beneficial. Page was eager to accept the invitation to speak at NES, and he sought approval from Trump campaign officials to make the trip to Russia. On May 16, 2016, while that request was still under consideration, Page emailed Clovis J.D. Gordon and Walid Veres and suggested that candidate Trump take his place speaking at the commencement ceremony in Moscow. On June 19, 2016, Page followed up again to request approval to speak at the NES event and to reiterate that NES would love to have Mr. Trump speak at the annual celebration in Page's place. Campaign manager Corey Lewandowski responded the same day, saying, "If you want to do this, it would be outside of your role with the DJT for President campaign. I am certain Mr. Trump will not be able to attend." In early July 2016, Page traveled to Russia for NES events. On July 5, 2016, Denis Klementov, copying his brother Dmitry Klementov, emailed Maria Zakharova, director of the Russian Ministry of Foreign Affairs Information and Press Department, about Page's visit and his connection to the Trump campaign. Denis Klementov said in the email that he wanted to draw the Russian government's attention to Page's visit to Moscow. His message to Zakharova is down here. Continued. Page is Trump's advisor on foreign policy. He is a known businessman. He used to work in Russia. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to help contact him. Dmitry Klementov then contacted Russian press secretary Dmitry Peskov about Page's visit to see if Peskov wanted to introduce Page to any Russian government officials. The following day, Peskov responded to what appears to have been the same Denis Klementov's Zakharova email thread. Peskov wrote, "I have read about Page. Specialists say that he is far from being the main one. So I better not initiate a meeting in the Kremlin." Sorry, Carter. On July 7, 2016, Page delivered the first of his two speeches in Moscow at NES. In the speech, Page criticized the U.S. government's foreign policy toward Russia, saying that Washington and other Western capitals have impeded potential progress through their often hypocritical focus on ideas such as democratization, inequality, corruption, and regime change. On July 8, 2016, Page delivered a speech during the NES commencement. After Page delivered his commencement address, Russian Deputy Prime Minister and NES board member Arkady Dvorkovich spoke at the ceremony and stated that the sanctions which the United States had imposed on Russia had hurt the NES. Page and Dvorkovich shook hands at the commencement ceremony, and Weber confirmed that Dvorkovich made statements to Page about working together in the future. More for the grand jury. Page said, during his time in Moscow, he met with friends and associates he knew from when he lived in Russia, including Andrei Baranov, a former Gazprom employee who had become the head of investor relations at Rosneft, a Russian energy company. Page stated that he and Baranov talked about immaterial, non-public information. Page believed he and Baranov discussed Rosneft's president Igor Sechin, and he thought Baranov might have mentioned the possibility of a sale of a stake in Rosneft in passing. Page recalled mentioning his involvement in the Trump campaign with Baranov, though he did not remember details of the conversation. Page also met with individuals from Tatneft, a Russian energy company, to discuss possible business deals, including having Page work as a consultant. On July 8, 2016, while he was in Moscow, Page emailed several campaign officials and stated he would send a readout soon regarding some incredible insights and outreach I received from a few Russian legislators and members of the presidential administration here. On July 9, 2016, Page emailed Clovis, writing in pertinent part, Russian Deputy Prime Minister and NES board member Arkady Dvorkovich also spoke before the event. In private conversation, Dvorkovich expressed strong support for Mr. Trump and a desire to work together toward devising better solutions in response to the vast range of current international problems. Based on feedback from a diverse array of other sources close to the presidential administration, it was readily apparent that this sentiment is widely held at all levels of government. Despite those representations to the campaign, The office was unable to obtain additional evidence or testimony about who Page may have met or communicated with in Moscow. Thus, Page's activities in Russia, as described in his emails with the campaign, were not fully explained. But the grand jury is looking into it. I don't want to take all the credit. Yeah, I do. D. Later campaign work and removal from the campaign. In July 2016, after returning from Russia, Page traveled to the Republican National Convention in Cleveland. While there, Page met with Russian Ambassador to the United States, Sergei Kislyak. That interaction is described in Volume 1, Section 4A6 info. Page later emailed campaign officials with feedback that he received from ambassadors that he had met at the convention. He wrote that Ambassador Kislyak was very worried about candidate Clinton's worldviews. And more grand jury. Following the convention, Page's trip to Moscow and his advocacy for pro-Russian foreign policy drew the media's attention and began to generate substantial press coverage. The campaign responded by distancing itself from Page, describing him as an informal foreign policy advisor who did not speak for Mr. Trump or the campaign. On September 23, 2016, Yahoo News reported that U.S. intelligence officials were investigating whether Page had opened private communications with senior Russian officials to discuss U.S. sanctions policy under a possible Trump administration. A campaign spokesman told Yahoo News that Page had no role in the campaign and the campaign was not aware of his activities, past or present. On September 24, 2016, Page was formally removed from the campaign. Although Page had been removed from the campaign after the election, he sought a position in the Trump administration. On November 14, 2016, he submitted an application to the transition team that inflated his credentials and experiences, stating that in his capacity as a Trump campaign foreign policy advisor, he had met with top world leaders and effectively, responded to diplomatic outreach efforts from senior government officials in Asia, Europe, the Middle East, Africa, and the Americas. Page received no response from the transition team. When Page took a personal trip to Moscow in December 2016, he met again with at least one Russian government official. That interaction and discussion of that December trip are set forth in Volume 1, Section 4B6 info. 4. Now, that's the story of Carter Page. And next, Dmitry Sims. Alright, we get the story now of Dmitry Simes and the Center for the National Interest. Appropriately named place if there ever was one. Members of the Trump campaign interacted on several occasions with the Center for National Interest, CNI, principally through its president and chief executive officer, Dmitry Simes. CNI is a think tank with expertise in and connections to the Russian government. Simes was born in the former Soviet Union and immigrated to the United States in the 1970s. In April 2016, candidate Trump delivered his first speech on foreign policy and national security at an event hosted by the National Interest, a publication affiliated with CNI. Then Senator Jeff Sessions and Russian Ambassador Kislyak both attended the event, and as a result, it gained some tension in relation to Sessions' confirmation hearing to become Attorney General. Sessions had various other contacts with CNI during the campaign period on foreign policy matters, including Russia. Jared Kushner also interacted with Simes about the Russian issues during the campaign. The investigation did not identify evidence the campaign passed or received any messages or to or from the Russian government through the CNI or Simes. CNI and Dmitry Simes connect with the Trump campaign. CNI is a Russian-based nonprofit. CNI is a Washington-based nonprofit organization that grew out of a center founded by former President Richard Nixon. CNI describes itself as a voice for strategic realism in U.S. foreign policy and publishes a bi-monthly foreign policy magazine, the national interest. CNI is overseen by a board of directors and advisory council that is largely honorary and whose members at the relevant time include Sessions, who serves as an advisor to the candidate Trump on national security and foreign policy issues. Dmitry Simes is president and CEO of CNI and publisher and CEO of the national interest. Simes was born in the former Soviet Union. Mike immigrated to the United States in the early 1970s and joined CNI's predecessor after working at the Carnegie Endowment for International Studies. Peace. Peace. How did peace get involved? Simes has many contacts with current and former Russian government officials, as does CNI collectively. As CNI stated when seeking a grant from the Carnegie Corporation in 2015, CNI has unparalleled access to Russian officials and politicians among Washington think tanks, in part because CNI has arranged for U.S. delegations to visit Russia and for Russian delegations to visit the United States as part of so-called Track 2 diplomatic efforts. On March 14, 2016, CNI board member Richard Pepler organized a luncheon for CNI and its honorary chairman Henry Kissinger, of all people, at the Time Warner building in New York. The idea behind the event was to generate interest in CNI's work and recruit new board members for CNI. Along with Simes, attendees at the event included Jared Kushner, son-in-law of candidate Trump. Kushner told the office that the event came at a time when the Trump campaign was having trouble securing support from experienced foreign policy professionals, and as a result, he decided to seek Sims' assistance during the March 14th event. Sims and Kushner spoke again on March 24, 2016 telephone call, 3 days after Trump had publicly named the team of foreign policy advisors that had been put together on short notice. On March 31, 2016, Simes and Kushner had an in-person one-on-one meeting in Kushner's New York office. During that meeting, Sims told Kushner that the best way to handle foreign policy issues for the Trump campaign would be to organize an advisory group of experts to meet with candidate Trump and develop a foreign policy approach that was consistent with Trump's vision. Some believe Kushner was receptive to that suggestion. Sims also had contact with other individuals associated with the Trump campaign regarding the campaign's foreign policy positions. For example, on June 17, 2016, Sims sent out Sims sent J.D. Gordon an email with memo to Senator Sessions that we discussed at our recent meeting. And some footnotes. And asked Gordon to read it and share it with Sessions. The memorandum proposed building a small and carefully selected group of experts to assist Sessions with the campaign, operating under the assumption that Hillary Clinton is very vulnerable on national security and foreign policy issues. The memorandum outlined key issues for the campaign, including a few beginning with Russia. B. National Interest hosts a foreign policy speech at the Mayflower Hotel. During both their March 24th phone call and their March 31st in-person meeting, Sims and Kushner discussed the possibility of CNI hosting a foreign policy speech by candidate Trump. Following those conversations, Sims agreed that he and others associated with CNI would provide behind-the-scenes input on the substance of the foreign policy speech, and that CNI officials would coordinate the logistics of the speech with Sessions and his staff, including Sessions' Chief of Staff, Rick Dearborn. In mid-April 2016, Kushner put Sims in contact with senior policy advisor Stephen Miller and forwarded to Sims an outline of the foreign policy speech that Miller had prepared. Sims sent back to the campaign bullet points with ideas for the speech that had drafted with CNI Executive Director Paul Saunders and board member Richard Burt. Sims received subsequent draft outlines from Miller, and he and Saunders spoke to Miller by phone about substantive changes to the speech. It is not clear, however, whether CNI officials actually received an actual draft of the speech for comment. While Saunders recalled having received such an actual draft, Sims did not, and the emails that CNI produced to this office did not contain such a draft. After board members expressed concern to Sims that CNI's hosting the speech could be perceived as an endorsement of a particular candidate, CNI decided to have its publication, the National Interest serve as the host and have the event at the National Press Club. Kushner later requested that the event be moved to the Mayflower Hotel, which was another venue that Sims had mentioned during the initial discussion with the campaign, in order to address concerns about security and capacity. So far, so good, huh? On April 25th, 2016, Saunders booked event rooms at the Mayflower to host both the speech and a VIP reception that was to be held beforehand. Sanders understood that the reception at which invitees would have a chance to meet candidate Trump would be a small event. Saunders decided who would attend by looking at the list of CNI's invitees to the speech itself and then choosing a subset for the reception. CNI's invitees to the reception including Sessions and Kislyak. The week before the speech, Sims had informed Kislyak that he would be invited to the speech and that he would have the opportunity to meet Trump. When the pre-speech reception began on April 27th, the receiving line was quickly organized so that attendees could meet Trump. Sessions first stood next to Trump to introduce him to the many members of Congress who were in attendance. After those members had been introduced, Sims stood next to Trump and introduced him to the CNI invitees in attendance, including Kislyak. Sims perceived the introduction to be positive and friendly, but thought it clear that Kislyak and Trump had just met for the first time. Kislyak had also met Kushner during the pre-speech reception. The two shook hands and chatted for a minute or two, during which Kushner recalled Kislyak saying, "We like what your candidate is saying. It's refreshing." Several public reports state that in addition to speaking to Kushner at the pre-speech reception, Kislyak also met or conversed with Sessions at that time. Sessions stated in investigators, however, that he did not remember any such conversation, nor did anyone else affiliated with CNI or the national interest specifically recall a conversation or meeting between Sessions and Kislyak at the pre-speech reception. It appears that if a conversation occurred at the pre-speech reception, it was a brief one conducted in public view, similar to the exchange between Kushner and Kislyak. The office found no evidence that Kislyak had conversed with either Trump or Sessions after the speech or would have had the opportunity to do so. Sims, for example, did not recall seeing Kislyak at the post-speech luncheon. And the only witness who accounted for Sessions' whereabouts stated that Sessions may have spoken to the press after the event but then departed for Capitol Hill. Saunders recalled, based in part on food-related request he received from a campaign staff member, that Trump had left the hotel a few minutes after the speech to go to the airport. C. Jeff Sessions' post-speech interactions with CNI. In the wake of Sessions' confirmation hearing, an Attorney General questions arose about whether Sessions' campaign period interactions with CNI, apart from the Mayflower speech, included any additional meetings with Ambassador Kislyak or involved Russian-related matters. With respect to Kislyak contacts, on May 23, 2016, Sessions attended CNI's Distinguished Service Award dinner at the Four Seasons Hotel in Washington, D.C. Sessions attended pre-dinner reception and was seated at one of the two head tables for the event. A seating chart prepared by Saunders indicates that Sessions was scheduled to be seated next to Kislyak, who appears to have responded to the invitation indicating he would attend the event. Sessions, however, did not remember speaking with, or sitting next to Kislyak at the dinner. Although CNI-based member Charles Boyd said he may have seen Kislyak at the dinner, Simon Sanders and Jacob Heilbrunn, editor of the National Interest, had no recollection of seeing Kislyak at the May 23rd event. Kislyak also does not appear in any of the photos from the event the office obtained. In the summer of 2016, CNI organized at least 2 dinners in Washington, D.C. for Sessions to meet with experienced foreign policy professionals. The dinners included CNI-affiliated individuals such as Richard Burt and Zalmay Khalilzad, a former U.S. ambassador to Afghanistan and Iraq, and the person who had introduced Trump before the April 27, 2016 foreign policy speech. Khalilzad also met with Sessions one-on-one separately from the dinners. At the dinners and in the meetings, the participants addressed U.S. relations with Russia, including how U.S. relations with NATO and European countries affected U.S. policy towards Russia. But the discussions were not exclusively focused on Russia. Khalilzad, for example, recalled discussing nation-building and violent extremism with Sessions. In addition, Sessions asked Saunders of CNI to draft 2 memorandum not specific to Russia, one on Hillary Clinton's foreign policy shortcomings and another on Egypt. D. Jared Kushner's continuing contacts with Sims. Between April 2016 speech and the Mayflower Hotel in the presidential election, Jared Kushner had periodic contacts with Symes. These contacts consisted of both in-person meetings and phone conversations with concerned how to address issues relating to Russia and the campaign and how to move forward with the advisory group of foreign policy experts that Symes had proposed. Symes recalled that he, not Kushner, initiated all conversations about Russia and that Kushner never asked him to set up back-channel conversations with the Russians. According to Symes, after the Mayflower speech in late April, Symes raised the issue of Russian contacts with Kushner and advised that it was bad optics for the campaign to develop hidden Russian contacts and told Kushner both that the campaign should not highlight Russia as an issue and should handle any contacts with Russians with care. Kushner generally provided a similar account of his interactions with Symes. Among the Kushner-Symes meetings, one was held August 17, 2016 at Symes' request in Kushner's New York office. The meeting was to address foreign policy advice that CNI was providing and how to respond to the Clinton campaign's Russia-related attacks on candidate, Trump, right? Right? Yeah. Attacks on Trump. In advance of the meeting, Symes sent Kushner a Russian policy memo laying out what Mr. Trump may want to say about Russia. In cover email transmitting that memo and a phone call to set up the meeting, Symes mentioned a well-documented story of highly questionable connections between Bill Clinton and the Russian government, parts of which, according to Symes, had been discussed with the CIA and the FBI in the late 1990s and shared with the independent counsel at the end of the Clinton presidency. Kushner forwarded the email to senior Trump campaign officials Stephen Miller, Paul Manafort, and Rick Gates with the note, "Suggestion only." Manafort subsequently forwarded the email to his assistant and scheduled a meeting with Symes. Manafort was on the verge of leaving the campaign by that time of the scheduled meeting with Symes, and Symes ended up meeting only with Kushner. During the August 17th meeting, Symes provided Kushner the Clinton-related information that he had promised. Symes told Kushner that personal privacy, nothing illegal here. Symes claimed that he had received this information from former CIA and Reagan White House official friends who claimed to have learned it from U.S. intelligence sources, not from Russians. Symes perceived that Kushner did not find the information to be of interest or use to the campaign because it was, in Symes' part, old news. Interviewed by The Office, Kushner stated that he believed there was little chance of something new being revealed about the Clintons given their long career as public figures, and that he never received from Symes information that could be operationalized for the Trump campaign. Despite Kushner's reaction, Symes believed that he provided the same information to a small group meeting of foreign policy experts that CNI had organized for Sessions. And that's it on Symes. We rolling? I got this. I think I can hear you guys. I got this new tech. I got this ear thing. Supposed to help me hear it better. Ah. Oh, yeah, I can hear that. Yeah, okay. Here we go. We rolling? Good. Okay. A little history lesson for you here. 5. June 9, 2016 meeting at Trump Tower. On June 9, 2016, senior representatives of the Trump campaign met in Trump Tower with a Russian attorney expecting to receive derogatory information about Hillary Clinton from the Russian government. The meeting was proposed to Donald Trump Jr. in an email from Robert Goldstone at the request of his then-client Amin Agalarov, son of Russian real estate developer Aras Agalarov. Goldstone relayed to Trump Jr. that the Crown Prosecutor of Russia offered to provide the Trump campaign with some official documents and information that would incriminate Hillary and her dealings with Russia as part of Russia and its government support for Mr. Trump. Trump Jr. immediately responded that, "If it's what you say, I love it," and arranged the meeting through a series of emails and telephone calls. Trump Jr. invited campaign chairman Paul Manafort and senior advisor Jared Kushner to attend the meeting, and both attended. Members of the campaign discussed the meeting before it occurred, and we've had a malfunction. Hang on. Can we get this? The Russian attorney who spoke at the meeting. Oh no, we gotta go backwards a little bit. Good thing I got this tech thing. Let me know when you get it backwards. I don't want to be looking at it. It looks bad. The camera. I think you got it. Okay, here we go. Members of the Trump campaign discussed the meeting before it occurred, and Michael Cohen recalled that Trump Jr. may have told candidate Trump about an upcoming meeting to receive adverse information about Clinton without linking the meeting to Russia. According to written answers submitted by President Trump, he has no recollection of learning of the meeting at the time, and the office found no documentary evidence showing that he was made aware of the meeting or its Russian connection before it occurred. The Russian attorney who spoke at the meeting, Natalia Veselnitskaya, had previously worked for the Russian government and maintained a relationship with that government throughout this period of time. She claimed that funds derived from illegal activities in Russia were provided to Hillary Clinton and other Democrats. Trump Jr. requested evidence to support those claims, but Veselnitskaya did not provide such information. She and her associates then turned to a critique of the origins of the Magnitsky Act, a 2012 statute that imposed financial and travel sanctions on Russian officials and resulted in a retaliatory ban on adoption of Russian children. Trump Jr. suggested that the issue could be revisited when and if candidate Trump was elected. After the election, Veselnitskaya made additional efforts to follow up on the meeting, but the Trump transition team did not engage. A. Setting up the June 9th meeting. 1. Outreach to Donald Trump Jr. Sorry, I'm just taking things literal these days. Aras Agalarov is a Russian real estate developer with ties to Putin and other members of the Russian government, including Russia's Prosecutor General Yuri Chaka. Aras Agalarov is the president of the Crocus Group, a Russian enterprise that holds substantial Russian government construction contracts, and as discussed above, Volume 1, Section 4A1, Supra. I don't know, Supra. Isn't that like a Toyota or something? Worked with Trump in connection with the 2013 Miss Universe pageant in Moscow and a potential Trump Moscow real estate project. The relationship continued over time as the parties pursued the Trump Moscow project in 2013-2014 and exchanged gifts and letters in 2016. For example, in 2016, Trump responded to a letter from Aras Agalarov with a handwritten note. Aras Agalarov expressed interest in Trump's campaign, passing on congratulations for winning in the primary, and according to one email drafted by Goldstone, an offer of his support, and that of many of his important Russian friends and colleagues, especially with reference to U.S.-Russian relations. On June 3rd, 2016, Emin Agalarov called Goldstone Emin's then publicist. Goldstone is a music and events promoter who represented Emin Agalarov from approximately late 2012 until late 2016. While representing Emin Agalarov, Goldstone facilitated the ongoing contact between Trumps and the Agalarovs, including an invitation that Trump sent to Putin to attend the 2013 Miss Universe pageant in Moscow. Oh, and some grand jury stuff. Goldstone understood grand jury stuff. Russian political connection, and Emin Agalarov indicated that the attorney was a prosecutor. Goldstone recalled that the information that might interest the Trumps involved Hillary Clinton and grand jury stuff. Almost makes you wish you were on the grand jury, doesn't it? There's more grand jury stuff in our footnotes. What? Okay, I'll just keep reading. I don't know if I like this headphone thing. The grand jury stuff mentioned by Emin Agalarov was Natalia Veselnitskaya. From approximately 1998 until 2001, Veselnitskaya worked as a prosecutor for the Central Administrative District of the Russian Prosecutor's Office, and she continued to perform government-related work and maintain ties to the Russian government following her departure. She lobbied and testified about the Magnitsky Act, which imposed financial sanctions and travel restrictions on Russian officials, and was named for a Russian tax specialist who exposed a fraud and later died in a Russian prison. Putin called the statute a purely political, unfriendly act, and Russia responded by barring a list of current and former U.S. officials from entering Russia and by halting the adoption of Russian children by U.S. citizens. Veselnitskaya performed legal work for Denis Kazrev. I never pronounce anything with more than two consonants in a row. The son of a Russian businessman, Peter Kazrev, and for his company Provision Holding Companies, which was a defendant in the civil forfeiture action alleging the laundering of possible proceeds from the fraud exposed by Magnitsky. She also, I guess it does have like the Y counts as vowel, but I don't know how to pronounce that. Appears to have been involved in an April 2016 approach to a U.S. congressional delegation in Moscow offering confidential information from the Prosecutor General of Russia about interactions between certain political forces in our two countries. Oh, okay. Shortly after his June 3rd call with Eamon Agalarov, Goldstone emailed Trump Jr. The email stated, "Good morning. Eamon just called and asked me to contact you with something very interesting. The Crown Prosecutor of Russia met with his father, Arias, this morning, and in their meeting offered to provide the Trump campaign with some official documents and information that would incriminate Hillary in her dealings with Russia and would be very useful to your father. This is obviously very high-level and sensitive information, but it is part of Russia and its government support for Mr. Trump, helped along by us and Eamon. What do you think is the best way to handle this information, and would you be able to speak to Eamon about it directly? I can also send this info to your father via Rona, but it is sensitive information, so I wanted to send it to you first. Best, Rob Goldstone." Within minutes of this email, Trump Jr. responded emailing back, "Thanks, Rob. I appreciate that. I'm on the road at the moment. Perhaps I just speak to Eamon first. Seems we have some time, and if it's what you say, I love it, especially later in the summer. Could we do a call first thing next week when I am back?" Goldstone conveyed Trump Jr.'s interest to Eamon Agalarov, emailing that Trump Jr. wants to speak personally on the issue. On June 6, 2016, Eamon Agalarov asked Goldstone if there was any news, and Goldstone explained that Trump Jr. was likely still traveling for the final elections, where Trump will be crowned the official nominee. On the same day, Goldstone again emailed Trump Jr. and asked when Trump Jr. was free to talk with Eamon about this Hillary info. Trump Jr. asked if this should be good, they could speak now. And Goldstone arranged a call between Trump Jr. and Eamon Agalarov. On June 6th and June 7th, Trump Jr. and Eamon Agalarov have multiple brief calls. Also, on June 6, 2016, Aras Agalarov called Kavel and asked him to attend a meeting in New York with the Trump Organization. Kavel is a Georgia-born, naturalized U.S. citizen who worked in the United States for the Crocus Group and reported to Aras Agalarov. Kavel told the office that in a second phone call on June 6, 2016, Aras Agalarov asked Kavel if he knew anything about the Magnitsky Act, and Aras sent him a short synopsis for the meeting and Veselnitskaya's business card. According to Kavel, Aras Agalarov said the purpose of the meeting was to discuss the Magnitsky Act, and he asked the Kavel to translate. Well, I'd like him to translate. That's a lot of weird words for me. Awareness of the meeting within the campaign. On June 7th, Goldstone emailed Trump Jr. and said that Eamon asked that I schedule a meeting with you and the Russian government attorney who's flying over here from Moscow. Trump Jr. replied that Manafort, identified as the campaign boss, Jared Kushner, and Trump Jr. would likely attend. Goldstone was surprised to learn that Trump Jr., Manafort, and Kushner would attend. Kaveladze, grand jury, puzzled by the list of attendees, and that he checked with one of Eminem's Agalarov assistants, Roman Banianimov, who said that the purpose of the meeting was for Veselnitskaya to convey negative information on Hillary Clinton. Banianimov, however, stated that he did not recall having known or said that. Early on June 8, 2016, Kushner emailed his assistant asking her to discuss at 3 p.m. Something. Meeting the following day with Trump Jr. Later that day, Trump Jr. forwarded the entirety of his email correspondence regarding the meeting with Goldstone to Manafort and Kushner under the subject line forward, Russia, Clinton, private and confidential, adding a note that the meeting got moved to 4 tomorrow at my office. Kushner then sent his assistant a second email informing her that the meeting with Don Jr. is at 4 p.m. now. Manafort responded, see you then, P. Rick Gates, who was a deputy campaign chairman, stated during interviews with the office that in the days before June 9, 2016, Trump Jr. announced at a regular morning meeting of the senior campaign staff and Trump family members that he had a lead on negative information about the Clinton Foundation. Gates believed that Trump Jr. said the information was coming from a group in Kyrgyzstan and that he was introduced to the group by a friend. Gates recalled that the meeting was attended by Trump Jr., Eric Trump, Paul Manafort, Hope Hicks, and joining late, Ivanka Trump and Jared Kushner. According to Gates, Manafort warned the group that the meeting likely would not yield vital information and they should be careful. Hicks denied any knowledge of the June 9th meeting before 2017, and Kushner did not recall if the planned June 9th meeting came up at all earlier that week. Michael Cohen recalled being in Donald J. Trump's office on June 6th or 7th when Trump Jr. told his father that a meeting to obtain adverse information about Clinton was going forward. Cohen did not recall Trump Jr. stating that the meeting was connected to Russia. From the tenor of the conversation, Cohen believed that Trump Jr. had previously discussed the meeting with his father, although Cohen was not involved in any such conversation. In an interview with the Senate Judiciary Committee, however, Trump Jr. stated that he did not inform his father about the meeting, I betcha. And this gets a little sticky. Somebody's getting in trouble here. Hope it's not the big boss. Oh. In form of the emails or the upcoming meeting, both of them. Similarly, neither Manafort nor Kushner recalled anyone informing candidate Trump of the meeting, including Trump Jr. President Trump has stated to this office in written answers to questions that he has no recollection of learning at the time that his son Manafort or Kushner was considering participating in a meeting in June 2016 concerning potentially negative information about Hillary Clinton. B. The events of June 9, 2016. 1. Arrangements for the meeting. Veselnitskaya was in New York on June 9, 2016 for an appellate meeting in the Prevezin civil forfeiture litigation. That day, Veselnitskaya called Renal Akhmetshin, a Soviet-born U.S. lobbyist, and when she learned he was in New York, invited him to lunch. Akhmetshin told the office that he had worked on issues relating to the Magnitsky Act and worked on the Prevezin litigation. Gavalaxy and Anatoly Samochoronov, a what? Wow, that's a long footnote. Glad I don't have to read those. Is it? Is it bring your daughter to work day again?
Come on. Cry. Come on.
Russian-born translator who had assisted Veselnitskaya with Magnitsky-related lobbying in the Prevezin case also attended the lunch. Veselnitskaya said she was meeting grand jury stuff and asked Akhmetshin what she should tell him. According to several participants at the lunch, Veselnitskaya showed Akhmetshin a document alleging financial misconduct by Bill Browder and the Ziff brothers, Americans with business in Russia, and those individuals subsequently making a political donations to the DNC. The group then went to Trump Tower for the meeting. 2. Conduct of the meeting. Trump Jr., Manafort, and Kushner participated on the Trump side, while Kavaladze, Samochonev, Akhmetshin, and Goldstone attended with Veselnitskaya. The office spoke to every participant except Veselnitskaya and Trump Jr., the latter of whom declined to be voluntarily interviewed by the office. Trump Jr. declined? The meeting lasted approximately 20 minutes. Goldstone recalled that Trump Jr. invited Veselnitskaya to begin but did not say anything about the subject of the meeting. Participants agreed that Veselnitskaya stated that the Ziff brothers had broken Russian laws and had donated their profits to the DNC or the Clinton campaign. She asserted that the Ziff brothers had engaged in tax evasion and money laundering. In both the United States and Russia. According to Akhmetshin, Trump Jr. asked follow-up questions about how the alleged payments could be tied specifically to the Clinton campaign, but Veselnitskaya indicated that she could not trace the money once it entered the United States. Kavaladze similarly recalled that Trump Jr. asked what they have on Clinton, and Kushner became aggravated and asked, "What are we doing here?" Or actually goes like, "What are we doing here?" Akhmetshin then spoke about U.S. sanctions imposed under the Magnitsky Act and Russia's response prohibiting U.S. adoption of Russian children. Several participants recalled that Trump Jr. commented Trump is a private citizen and there's nothing they could do at that time. Trump Jr. also said they could revisit the issue if and when they were in government. Notes that Manafort took on his phone reflect the general flow of the conversation, though not all its details. At some point in the meeting, Kushner sent an iMessage to Manafort stating waste of time, followed immediately by two separate emails to assistants at Kushner companies with requests that they chase him out of there probably. That they call him to give him an excuse to leave. Yeah. Samo Chornov recalled that Kushner departed the meeting before it concluded. Veselnitskaya recalled the same when interviewed by the press in July 2017. Veselnitskaya's press interviews and written statements to Congress differ materially from other accounts. In July 2017 press interview, Veselnitskaya claimed that she had no connection to the Russian government and did not refer to any derogatory information concerning the Clinton campaign when she met with the Trump campaign officials. Veselnitskaya's November 2017 written submission to the Senate Judiciary Committee stated that the purpose of the June 9th meeting was not to connect with the Trump campaign, but rather to have a private meeting with Donald Trump Jr. A friend of my good acquaintance's son on the matter of assisting me or my colleagues with informing the Congress members as to the criminal nature of the manipulation and interference with legislative activities of the U.S. Congress. In other words, Veselnitskaya claimed her focus was on Congress and not the campaign. No witness, however, recalled any reference to Congress during the meeting. Veselnitskaya also maintained that she attended the meeting as a lawyer of Denis Katsevich, the previously mentioned owner of Provision Holdings, but she did not introduce herself in this capacity. In a July 2017 television interview, Trump Jr. stated that while he had no way to gauge the reliability, credibility, or accuracy of what Goldstone had stated was the purpose of the meeting, someone has information on our opponent, maybe this is something I should hear them out. Trump Jr. further stated in September 2017 congressional testimony that he thought he should listen to what Rob and his colleagues had to say. Depending on what, if any, information was provided, Trump Jr. stated that he could then consult with counsel to make an informed decision as to whether to give it any further consideration. I think that's the breaking the law part right there. After the June 9th meeting concluded, Goldstone apologized to Trump Jr. According to Goldstone, he told Trump Jr. and he told Ahmed Agalarov in a phone call that the meeting was about adoption. R.S. Agalarov asked Kavaladze to report in after the meeting, but before Kavaladze could call, R.S. Agalarov called him. With Veselnitskaya sit next to him, Kavaladze reported that the meeting had gone well, but he later told R.S. Agalarov that the meeting about the Magnitsky Act had been a waste of time because it was not with lawyers and they were preaching to the wrong crowd. C. Post-June 9 events. Veselnitskaya and R.S. Agalarov made at least 2 unsuccessful attempts after the election to meet with Trump representatives to convey similar information about Broder and the Magnitsky Act. On November 23, 2016, Kavaladze emailed Goldstone about setting up another meeting with T people and sent a document bearing allegations similar to those conveyed on June 9th. With T people. I like that. T people. Kavaladze followed up with Goldstone stating that Mr. A, which Goldstone understood to mean R.S. Agalarov, called to ask about the meeting. Goldstone emailed the document to Rona Groff saying that R.S. Agalarov has asked me to pass on this document in the hope that it be passed to the appropriate team. If needed, a lawyer representing the case is buried under these footnotes. New York currently and happy to meet with any member of the transition team. According to Goldstone, around January 2017, Kavaladze contacted him again to set up another meeting, but Goldstone did not make the request. The investigation did not identify evidence of the transition team following up. Participants in the June 9, 2016 meeting began receiving inquiries from attorneys representing the Trump Organization starting in approximately June 2017. On approximately June 2, 2017, Goldstone spoke with Alan Garten, general counsel of the Trump Organization, about his participation in the June 9th meeting. That same day, Goldstone emailed Veselnitskaya's name to Garten, identifying her as a woman who was the attorney who spoke at the meeting from Moscow. Later in June 2017, Goldstone participated in a lengthier call with Garter and Alan Terfas, outside counsel for the Trump Organization, and subsequently personal counsel for Trump Jr., busy guy. On June 27, 2017, Goldstone emailed Emin Algalarov with the subject Trump attorneys and stated that he was interviewed by attorneys about the June 9th meeting who were concerned because it links Don Jr. to officials from Russia, which he has always denied meeting. Goldstone stressed that he did say at the time this was an awful idea and terrible meeting. Emin Algalarov sent a screenshot of the message to Kaveladze. The June 9th meeting became public in July 2017. In a July 2017 text message to Emin Algalarov, Goldstone wrote, "I made sure I kept you and your father out of this story, and if contacted, I can do a dance and keep you out of it." Goldstone added, "FBI now investigating. And I hope this favor was worth for your dad. It could blow up." On July 12, 2017, Emin Algalarov complained to Kaveladze that his father, Aras, never listens to him, and that never listens. I know that feeling. I know people that never listen. Relationship with Mr. T has been thrown down the drain. Too bad on that one. The next month, Goldstone commented to Emin Algalarov about the volume of publicity the June 9th meeting had generated, stating that his reputation was basically destroyed by this dumb meeting, which your father insisted on, even though Ike and me told him it would be bad news and not to do. Goldstone added, "I'm not able to respond out of courtesy to you and your father, so I'm painted as some mysterious link to Putin." After the public reporting on June 9th meeting began, representatives from the Trump Organization again reached out to participants. On July 10th, 2017, Terfas sent Goldstone an email with a proposed statement for Goldstone to issue, which read, "As a person who arranged the meeting, I can definitively state that the statements I have read by Donald Trump Jr. are 100% accurate. The meeting was a complete waste of time, and Don was never told Ms. Veselnitskaya's name prior to the meeting. Ms. Veselnitskaya mostly talked about the Majinsky Act and Russian adoption laws, and the meeting never lasted 20 to 30 minutes at most. There was never any follow-up, and nothing ever came of the meeting." Grand jury. Except grand jury. The statement drafted by the Trump Organization representative was grand jury. He proposed a different statement asserting that he had been asked by his client in Moscow, Emin Algalarov, to facilitate a meeting between a Russian attorney, Natalia Veselnitskaya, and Donald Trump Jr. The lawyer had apparently stated that she had some information regarding funding to the DNC from Russia, which she believed Mr. Trump Jr. might find interesting. Goldstone never released either statement. On the Russian end, there were also communications about I got a little technical problem here. And I lost my thingy. My auto scroller failed, and I lost my thingy. I can't talk to anybody. I'm gonna stop now. I gotta find my thingy. rolling? Alright, here we go. On the Russian end, there were also communications about what participants should say about the June 9th meeting. Specifically, the organization that hired Samochornov, an anti-Magnitsky Act group controlled by Veselnitskaya and the owner of Prevezion, offered to pay $90,000 of Samochorov's legal fees. Samochorov's. At Veselnitskaya's request, the organization sent Samochoraya a transcript of the Veselnitskaya press interview, and having trouble again. Can I go backwards a little bit here? Can you go backwards a little bit there? At Veselnitskaya's request, the organization sent Samuel Chornov a transcript of Veselnitskaya's press interview, and Samuel Chornov understood that the organization would pay his legal fees only if he made statements consistent with Veselnitskaya's. Samuel Chornov declined, telling the office that he did not want to perjure himself. The individual who conveyed Veselnitskaya's request to Samuel Chornov stated that he did not expressly condition payment on following Veselnitskaya's answers, but in hindsight recognized that by sending the transcript, Samuel Chornov could have interpreted the offer of assistance to be conditioned on his not contradicting Veselnitskaya's account. Volume 2, Section 2, info discusses interaction between President Trump Jr. and others in the June and July 2017 regarding the June 9th meeting. And that's our history lesson for today. Next, the Republican National Convention. Donald Trump ignores me and I don't know why. Everything the Trumpster hates rolled up into one guy. I'm sleepy and I'm nasty and I'm shady too, but not recused like Sessions. Was his name Magoo? Just like crooked Hillary or maybe lying Chuck. But no matter what I try, Don don't give a fuck. But I ain't no nervous Nancy or no sleazy Adam Schiff. Someone tell me how to get this ass to give a shit. I'm all for higher taxes and I'm all for higher crime. Think cheating Obama did the job just mighty fine. I like crazy Bernie, I like Pocahontas too. Just like Dickie Durbin, I ain't your mama's fool. Donald Trump ignores me and I don't know why. I'm everything the Trumpster hates rolled up into one guy. Lying, weak and heartless, slimeball slippery, sanctimonious, here for all to see.